I am your host, and today my guest is Callum Morgan. He's our most recent strength and conditioning coach, looking after the athletes living in the Western Suburbs of Melbourne, and really looking forward to chatting about his coaching journey as well as everything to do with AFL strength and conditioning. So if you're a parent of a junior athlete or you know someone who'd be interested in working with us, make sure to listen into the whole show. We're going to dive into a lot of fun and exciting topics, all things to do with footy. For those new to our podcast, our mission here at Prepare Like a Pro is to empower aspiring athletes and staff with practical knowledge from some of the industry's most inspiring individuals and to strengthen the AFL community. If you like the show, please show support by following us on Instagram and subscribing to the podcast. We're on iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube. Welcome, Caleb. Thanks for jumping on, mate.
Thanks, Jack. I really appreciate it. It's a pretty exciting opportunity, man. I'm a little bit nervous. I think I need to sort of, get involved and get settled down, but it's good. Thank you.
Yeah. No, it's good to have you on, mate, and looking forward to sharing your coaching journey. Take us to the very beginning, mate. At what age did you discover you had a passion for, strength and conditioning, but also working with elite athletes?
It's a great question. I was thinking sort of about that recently and sort of how I got involved and why I really enjoy coaching as well. And I think for me, it was sort of, I'd gone back from the US. I sort of graduated high school in the US and I sort of rolled straight into coaching. It was on-field coaching at the time, but I got straight into it and I just absolutely loved it. I was sort of 19 at the time and just loved being able to connect with the athletes and educate and mentor and that feeling of being able to help someone. I guess it's almost selfless and selfish in a manner of I really enjoy being able to impact positively on a young person's life and their sporting career particularly. And so that turned very quickly into how can I turn this into a career? Like, this is a passion. I really enjoy doing it. And so 19, 20, what's the next step for me? And that sort of ended up being, jumping in to doing my Cert 3 and 4 at VU. Obviously graduating in the US meant that I didn't have my sort of VCE certificates and such. And so I went through the TAFE of Cert 3, Cert 4, got that out of the way really quickly, really early at VU's program, which is a pretty good one. And that sort of gave me automatic entrance into sports science, exercise science at the time. So sort of fell in love with the process of, like I said, coaching and being able to impact athletes and young people in general from an early sort of point. And then the passion for S&C itself and sports science itself sort of developed along the way. So I think I always describe myself as probably a people person first rather than a sports scientist. I coach over a strength conditioning coach.
Yep.
My passions are in that interconnected sort of process and being able, like I said, I keep saying, but educating and mentoring. So started really early. Long answer short, it's probably about 19 when I started coaching, to be honest.
Yeah, that is relatively young compared to most coaches. That takes a little bit longer to find their journey and their passion. You mentioned, graduating in the US. Take us through that. Is that where you were born in America or born in Australia, moved over there for a period of time? How long were you in the US?
Yeah, so I was, born in Melbourne, Australia, or born in the country and lived in Melbourne and playing footy growing up. And I was always a really good runner and, skills weren't very good, but I felt like I was on the way to becoming something and I really wanted to become something. And one of my weaknesses was always sort of toughness over the footy. And so I thought, what could I do possibly to sort of increase that ability and sort of, make that a strength of mine? I thought American football is a fantastic idea. So I started playing American football, was about 15 or 16, and I just fell in love with it, the process and the sort of the level of dedication and involvement in it was just amazing. So I started doing that, fell in love with it, sort of went through the processes sort of through the state and national programs and ended up sort of getting the opportunity to go to the States in my last year of high school as a senior. So I was there for 1 year, played some high school football and then graduated from there and ended up coming back here and doing university here. But along the journey and part of the reason I became so in love with coaching is American football and its sort of specificity and its involvevement as a coach. And it's like its skill development and technique development it's really, really like high. And I think that process, and I really love that. I've always, even when I was 15, 16 playing footy, I've just loved like, how can I get better? And someone teaching me, this is what you can do and this is how you can better. And just always fell in love with that. So sort of came together and sort of all led to where I am now, I think. Yeah. Very much so.
Wow. That's an interesting background, mate. Grew up in the country, moved to the city and then over to the States to finish your final year and over in America. Yeah. That's ballsy. I love that.
Yeah,
For
correct.
you mentioned falling in love with the coaching side. What made you think about moving down more the strength and conditioning, sports science, opposed to the technical side of coaching?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think as I sort of went through my process of getting better as an athlete, or working my way up those levels, there were a couple of coaches along the way who were really impactful to me. By name, or name dropping them, but Matthew Pell, who's now in the States at Catapult, Pell used to sort of work quite a lot with me, and he was just, his impact on me as both an athlete and a person was pretty big, and so was another guy growing up, was Aristotle, who's now in North Melbourne as his trainer. Huge impacts as to me as a person first and foremost, but also my athletic career. And I think I always thought, I want to do that. I want to be able to impact someone the same way and have the same sort of positive impact on people's lives. And so it just made sense. And I don't know that sports science or strength conditioning is better than tactical in any way. It was just what had such an impact on me meant that I sort of went down that path. So yeah.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. It's great and goes to show, once you get later into your career, that you're recognizing the impact you can have with those, either working under you at the same level, that you can have. So clearly those guys were quite impactful in your decision making and forging your path. What about on that note, are there influencers or mentors, if you like, that have helped shape you to the coach you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. I think straight away I mentioned those two guys again, Maddie and Aris, sort of really early on. And then I think sort of as I went through the process of being a young coach and doing the internships and getting a couple of opportunities along the way, there's probably a couple of people. I think the first one that really sticks out to me, I did my internship, cadetship with the Western Bulldogs men's program a couple of years ago. And there were two coaches there at the time. Obviously, a year-long cadetship is going to be a very large impact on your education and development as a coach, I'm sure. But Andy Barnett and Kelvin Philp at the time were amazing and very contrasting in their systems and the way they sort of interacted with people and the way they thought about sort of strength and conditioning and sports science. But both were so amazing. I think, like, for me, watching someone like Kelvin, who's now at Port, just the way he could take information from a study or from what he'd read in research and apply it so directly and so well into his training systems was just incredible to watch, to be honest. But someone that had a big impact on me. And then I think sort of moving into my own coaching at the Doggies with the women's programs, Liv Knowles and Ben were there, Ben Walker, and was with under them, I guess, as Ben as an S&C coach and Liv as the high performance manager for would almost been 2 years, and just being able to be with them and learn and see them interact with athletes and how they sort of incorporated their own systems and processes, I think was pretty big for me as well. So they're probably the big ones. Yeah, and then the last one probably I'll throw in there because I just like throwing people's names in the hat is recently working with Phil Danzy, who's at the Doggies as well, and for him he's a rehab coordinator there, so it's a little bit different and obviously a little bit of a sidestep from some of my core S&C high performance roles. But we spent a lot of time talking about sort of change of direction and speed stuff and the need for its development in footy and junior football particularly, but athletes and athlete development and how we could probably do that a lot better in Australia. And that's something that I like. American football is change of direction and speed. So I love speaking with him and that sort of got my mind thinking. And really, to be honest, when I sort of reached out to you and we sort of had those conversations earlier on and I sort of jumped on board with Prepare Like a Pro, the concepts that Phil and I were speaking about and trying to develop just fit so well into the single like one-on-one coaching development systems and how I could take some of that conversations we were having and apply it to the athletes that I'm working with now. And see such benefits in it and I knew the importance. Now I can really one-on-one with an athlete, work with them, develop change of direction, speed, tick leads, breaking down into tackles, being able to run S-bends, all that really, nitty-gritty sports science stuff, but see it happen and see it really transform an athlete's ability to move across the field. Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah, it can be refreshing at times when you've worked only in team sports where obviously the athletes are pulled. Everyone wants time with the athletes, and now you've got a whole 60 minutes with only one athlete.
Absolutely.
It's a nice luxury to have. On that note, talk us about your one-on-one work. So for potential athlete or even a parent, thinking about doing some strength and conditioning? What are some of the benefits of strength and conditioning at ages from sort of 14 to 18 for footballers, but also what would a typical session sort of flow like when working with yourself?
Yeah, I think like for me, the biggest thing is, and I say this all the time. People, if anyone who watches this knows me, I've said it a million times. I think that athletes in Australia, we don't do a very good job of teaching athletes how to run and move well at a younger age. We get them to run 3 or 4 or 5 kilometers at a time, and they're elite endurance athletes and they can kick a footy really well. But in terms of actual speed, like speed, run tech, change of direction, run tech, that stuff, I think we don't do a very good job of it. And like you said, at the team level, it's just not as important as being able to run your aerobic stuff, be able to run out a game, being able to hit a target on, by foot or by hand and understand the game. So of course, and I understand why it falls down, but I think that there's a really big piece for young athletes to go, I'm going to learn how to run. I'm going to learn how to move really quickly and really well. And then they'll plug into my game. It'll just take me from a good football player to a really good football player. So that's probably the overview. And then for a session, for me, I think it's your basics, your warm ups, you get involved, you're getting moving. We're going through sort of our run tech, slow stuff. We're going through our decel, our jumps, and now our plyos, and getting some jump landing tech in there really early and getting them firing. Then we go through our speed, and I like to sort of break speed into a couple of different components. I think there's acceleration and top end speed, and teaching the athletes about those different things, and having some fun with it too. We the athletes I'm working with at the moment, I'll get them starting in different positions and doing different things, and then my favorite stuff is the change of direction stuff. So, your Y cuts, your T cuts, your S bends, your A returns, things that then take those and then transition into the field. So, a return cut looks like a return lead or a kick lead. Your decels into an acceleration look like a tackle when you're approaching an opponent. There's all those little things that I really enjoy doing personally. I just love it. So being able to work with an athlete one-on-one and do that, it's pretty special.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing, mate, and giving us a good insight. What do you think are some common mistakes that athletes either make on themselves when they're sort of looking after their own strength and conditioning, or perhaps coaches that are cutting their teeth at certain programs and are commonly making that you've seen over time, or perhaps you've made yourself that you've learned from your mentors from?
Yeah, I think like the first one for me that I think that people lose sight of just all the time, and I think it's something that I'm pretty passionate about, is the idea of having fun and enjoying the process and what you're doing. Like I just like, it's so cliche, it's so simplistic, I know, but we're working with kids, working with 14 to 18, even 14 to 24, like young people. I think enjoying sport, having fun, being able to go out and work really hard and get better, but enjoy doing that. It's so important, so critical. And I think that's really easily forgotten. There's so much pressure to perform and get better. That's probably the cliche sort of basic one I would say. But I think the second one's probably transferability is the word I'd use. But why are we doing what we're doing in the gym or on the field? Like everything we do, from my belief, is that it needs to be able to be transferred onto the field. The reason we're in the gym in the first place is because we want to become better football players, not because we want to get better at the bench press. Or the reason we're going out and doing spin change direction drills is not because we're trying to be an elite 100-meter athlete. We may be at the same time as being a football player, but we're trying to become better football players. So I think losing sight of that transferability is a really big one.
And where do you think, or why do you think people, potentially a lot of coaches will have that, talk about specificity and how everything's got purpose, but it's one thing to sort of say it, another thing to actually for it to be, eventuate and actually happen for the athlete. Like, where do you think the fall down comes from? Is it programming? Is it experience, understanding, how to have a good filter to what's relevant, or is it communicating to the athlete to get that intent? Well, what do you think from an effectiveness point of view?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think part of it is the obsession we have in S&C with like key milestones or key parameters or testing parameters. So your 3RMs or your 20-meter shuttles. I know that they're critical for tracking athlete development across a sort of a span of time, but I think we sometimes fall into the trap of really worrying about an athlete's 3RM on the bench press rather than how well they're moving or pushing off an opponent, or how their shoulders feeling after a big preseason. So I don't know that it's always that, but I think that's part of it. And I think that if you obviously you're trying to test and retest and see growth and development in an athlete, but less obsessed with the numbers and more obsessed with how the athlete's feeling and moving and hopefully along that way those parameters and testing parameters are moving with it, I think. Hope that makes sense. Yeah.
No, it does. Yeah, I think I think you nailed it on the head, mate. That resonates with me. We can get stuck in our own sort of silo of focusing on measure. Maybe if you're measured on those results and think that's what is most,
correct.
when really, like you said, it's a football program and everything should be revolved around helping the footballers, be able to play better footy.
Absolutely.
What about, has there been an athlete over your time that surprised you in the the results they've achieved, or perhaps the level that they reached, and what sort of, why did they surprise you in and what did you sort of learn from their approach?
Yeah, I feel like I feel like a couple of different ways with that. There's for me, I adore and love working with athletes that really buy into the process, are really genuinely involved in learning and understanding what's happening and why it's happening, and want to know more and really have an appetite for that understanding. I think as a coach, it's so easy because as a coach, we love the process so much. We love what we're doing, the programming, the amount of research we've done, the amount of schoolwork, and like, we love that, right? So when an athlete sort of buys into that and has an appetite for it, it's quite a sense of sort of, I don't know, connectivity, or like it all was for a reason, and it sort of makes sense. But I think the flip side to that is sometimes I'm surprised by the athletes who maybe, how do I say this as an S&C coach, don't love the gym or don't love the process as much, get everything done that they need to do, and do what they need to do. But again, that key piece of, they're really good footballers, and football is the key. They're not trying to become, an elite bodybuilder or an Olympic lifter. Like they'll do what they need to do, and they're bought into the process, but they're always ensuring that they're not losing sight of on field or being able to move well, or that kind of thing. So not being like, I try not to say like it's you don't work hard. They're working really hard and they're on the top of their game. But again, they just do what's transferable and apply it to the game, and they really make sure that it works and comes together. Something that I probably learned a little bit along the way is, as a coach, because you're so obsessed again with getting numbers and pushing athletes and making them bigger, stronger, and faster. And sometimes you see athletes, it's really good footballers, or any sport, really good athletes across the field, across different fields of sport, and they do what they need to do, but it's the sport that they really love and they're really good at and they really focus on. And
that's their
priority. A bit of a wake up.
That's great. That's great insight, mate. What about on yourself, mate? What are your favorite ways to develop your own skill set through, whether it be speaking to other practitioners, like you mentioned, Pelly, or is it reading books, journal articles, podcasts? Take us through your favorite way to sort of absorb new information.
I think as most young people these days, podcasts and online audiobooks are a go-to for me. That's just so easy. You can be doing other things. I can be traveling, going to work, or going to training, and so forth. But I think I probably, especially through uni, was quite difficult to, like, for me, it's like I really need to apply something myself. And so what I've sort of fell in love with, and I'm sure other coaches do this as well, but is learning something or hearing something or seeing something, someone else do it, and taking that and applying it to either my own training or an athlete that I've worked with for an extended period of time, who I trust, and I can sort of go, I know their programming, I know what they're capable of. Let me throw this change of direction drill at them and see how they respond. And not because I've worked with them for a long time, I know I can communicate well with them as well. But my own training as well, taking that concept and knowledge and idea and applying it, I think is a really big thing for me. Like actually trialing and erroring it. How does it feel? How does that new eccentric hamstring, does that blow my hamstring? Yep, that really hurt. I've got to be really careful if I throw that at an athlete as well. So
practicing what you preach. Love that.
Absolutely.
And what about if you could work in any elite sport in the world, what would be your choice and why, mate?
Oh gosh, I think I would love to be involved at the college level. I think college football, obviously, that was my, growing up, I was playing football, American football, and that was my sort of aspiration. So there's probably a part of a former life, a past life that really wants to get there, and maybe it's a different role as a coach rather than a player. But that environment would be pretty special, I think. It's a lot of high energy. You've got, a huge squad of young people that you could work with and sort of impact on. And that would be heaps of fun, I think. As a sort of, I don't know if I'd do it forever. It's pretty full on, I think, over there. But if I could do that for a little bit of time, it would be pretty cool.
Yeah, sure. And you mentioned earlier, like the learning from the elite athletes, the best of what they do, how they've got that strong ability about focusing on what's really important and still doing the work, but also really pouring all their energy into what's most important, their craft. What about from elite strength and conditioning coaches, sports scientists that you've worked with? What did you learn from them that they prioritized in and made sure that they were doing really well, and perhaps things that surprised you that they either weren't a part of their repertoire or skills that you thought might be relevant that actually weren't really used in elite sport?
Yeah, I think it's probably two things that are super impressive at the higher level. The first one's probably like flexibility and adaptability. Obviously, things move, particularly the last couple of years with COVID, but programs move. Athletes sort of scheduling changes, games sort of either are harder or easier, loading changes. Things are very, very movable, and so those elite coaches' ability to adapt and still get the most out of what they want is pretty special. And I think that's something that like young coaches, we spend, especially at university level, we spend a lot of time writing programs and year-long programs and macro and micro phases and you get everything planned out. You finally learn that. But then you walk through the door of a footy club at a semi-level or semi-professional, professional level, and they've got that, but it's just chaos inside of that. There's a macro phase, and they're throwing darts at it, and they're ripping things out, and they're replacing things, and they're sliding things. And day one was this, but now day 3 is this. And anyway, that's a really big thing. I think you just got to be really, as a young coach, go, cool, I believe in the macros and micros, and I understand the process and the systems that we've learned at university, but I've got to be super adaptable within that when I get to that next level. That's a really big one, I think. And the other one probably is the ability to like listen to an athlete and understand where they're at and be able to communicate why we're doing something and have an athlete buy into that system. My experience at the AFL level, like both women's and men's, is that the athletes get smashed. Whether it's training like loads, whether it's commitments outside of it, whether it's games themselves, whether it's injuries, it's full on, right? And we all know that. But there's a really good coach's ability to communicate with an athlete and know when they're a little bit down or when they're a little bit up as well, and take advantage of that and be able to get a little more juice into the training, or take a little bit out and still be able to get what they need out of it and ensure the athlete still getting the best out of their training. But again, it's almost like adaptability, but it's interpersonal now. It's being able to read an athlete and being flexible, that your program is less important than how the athlete's feeling sometimes, and being able to balance that. Yeah, I think that's a really big one as well.
Awesome. Great advice, mate. Thanks for sharing that. It's a good insight for developing coaches but also for athletes as well. What about some highlights, mate, that spring front of mind, that moments that you're proud of from your career so far?
Oh gosh. Probably the first one that just like jumps to mind was was probably my first real sort of season with the AFL, Western Bulldogs AFL women's program, and I'm sure it's well documented now that COVID hit the program pretty hard. In the opening round of season 6, we had some staff and players go down, and it's all in the Disney show now. But it was pretty tough, and I was sort of 3 or 4 IC at the time. I was sort of just an S&C coach for the 1 to 4 years, and I'd never done an AFL game. And all of our performance staff went down with COVID or were away. It was pretty hectic. And I got the call up. So it went from sort of the like I said, to just an S&C coach, and so the bottom rung, to all of a sudden doing the pre-game warm up and getting my field. So that was a massive highlight. That was just fun. That was crazy. It's one of the craziest experiences I've had, and I absolutely love that. And I'll live with that one for a long time. And the other one I reckon is probably the other end of the spectrum. In the VFL, my first season as a HPM at the VFL level, VFLW level, sorry, was pretty tough. We didn't do very well. We didn't win a game. And it was as any team at any time, not winning and doing your pre-season and getting through it, and then sort of getting beaten game to game, it can get really tough towards the end of the year. And the way the VFL women's season sort of ends, it ends in winter. So as the season draws on and we're not winning and it's getting colder and the weather turns shitty, it was pretty tough. And I reckon that one of the things I look back on is being able to still have fun and bring enjoyment. You know, it's so silly, but I don't know if you've ever heard of spike ball, which is the net and the ball. Anyway, again, it's a fun game. It's a fun warm up game. I think it's brilliant for warm up. We incorporated that into our warm up, you know, and I think for a lot of people, the response is like, you're not winning, you're not doing very well. Like, you probably need to take this a little bit more seriously. And of course we did, and we had to look at our process and get better. But the athletes are human, and losing sucks, and it's cold. And for me, it was just like being able to look on those memories quite fondly of, let's have fun with it. Let's still enjoy what we're doing, because it's still footy. We're still human. And at the end of the day, like, we've just got to keep moving and keep it positive. So that's probably one I look back on as well. Like, it's probably a little bit off topic in terms of S&C and performance and all that kind of stuff. But yeah,
that's a good one.
Human connection.
Yeah, I like that. And it just like touches on what you talked about there, the importance of being able to, you know, be adaptable, read your athletes and those interpersonal skills and recognize what's important at the time.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
That's awesome, mate. And good to back yourself in as well and stick fat to what you believe was most important at the time. What about 3 books or documentaries, podcast episodes, if you like, that for athletes or strength and conditioning, high performance staff that you think would be important to listen to or read to?
Oh gosh, this is a tough one for me. First one's probably Atomic Habits. I was actually at the Doggies, and Ben Walker, the S&C coach there, he was reading at the time, and we spent a little bit of time talking about it, and so he recommended it to me, and I jumped on and gave it a read, and that was really, really good. So that one's great. I think that one's for coaches and staff alike. Coaches and players and staff. That's everyone involved, because you know, it's a little bit more to your life, like how you change your life, how you alter your life in a really positive direction, and that just applies into training and plugs in. Oh gosh, I reckon the other one for me. I think for me it's like I'm a big person on motivation and inspiration, and how do we find those, and how does that, you know, every S&C coach or athlete who's in a program has access to programming and has access to running. And of course, some people's programming and science is better than others. That's the way it is. But at the end of the day, everyone's listening and everyone's running. And sometimes we've got to find an extra ticket. And for me, let's just go with motivation and enjoyment. So I'd probably throw 2 that are way off sort of the cusp is Shoe Dog, which is Phil Knight's book. And I feel like that for me was a really big book on inspiration and sort of taking risks and enjoying the process and sort of dreaming big. And it's not really athlete specific or S&C specific, but it's big. Another one is, what will I go with? Probably a bit lost in the last one, to be honest.
We can find if it pops up, we can come back.
Yeah, I might come back to that one. It's a bit embarrassing. I've sort of drawn a blank. Anyway, yeah, that's all right.
There's too many. One will pop up. What about pet peeves, mate? What fires you up in the industry?
I think we've already touched on it a little bit, but it's almost like the opposite of what I think it makes a good coach is when staff or coaches or people in the industry forget that everyone involved is human, and that's players and staff too. You know, I think we spend a lot of time talking about the athletes, which of course is critical, but staff as well. And in the stress of the system, in the stress of needing to perform and win, you lose sight of the humanity of everyone involved, and that people have their own personal struggles, or people are still human, and people still want to be able to have conversations and enjoy what they're doing. And I think that from time to time you see people sort of lose sight of that. And that's probably based on stress and the need to sort of, you know, keep a job and that kind of thing. And of course I understand, but gosh, it's pretty hard when you start to lose the humanity of it, and you know, you start to stop treating people and caring for people and showing empathy and compassion. It becomes pretty dark, I reckon.
Yeah. And that stems from, do you think, performances, or is that people in certain roles that, you know, is it a people thing, or do you think it's a performance thing, or a bit of both?
I think it's a bit of both. I think performance obviously is an issue. When performance fails, I think they can turn the best of people to become quite negative, because it's very stressful, right? The industry of work is very stressful. But I think there's also being able to adapt with the times. You know, so the classic stories of sort of Buckley or like Damien Hardwick's a great one of his evolution as a coach, and how he sort of he sort of bought into that interpersonal and showing a bit more empathy and compassion, and how it sort of turned the program around. So I wouldn't say old school, like, old school thought process, but definitely keeping up with new school and definitely sort of buying into being more empathetic and more compassionate. I think that's a huge learning a huge thing that staff could do or people in the programs could do. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. What about a favorite way to spend your day off?
Oh, jump on a plane and get out of here. That'd be a great one. No, I think, I think for me, being able to reset a little bit, I think coaching, you give a lot. You give a lot out to people, and most coaches really enjoy that, and educating and mentoring and teaching and giving to the athletes and helping them. So a day off is open for me is as chill as possible. It's probably, if it's college football season, it's watching college football on the couch for a couple of hours with some good breakfast, whether that's a big breakfast or coffee, and just resetting a little bit, and then maybe out for like a bike ride or something. Slow, be grounded, and sort of just reset and enjoy that, I think. Yeah
Well said, mate. It's a pretty consistent answer for those high performance strength and conditioning coaches. Like you said, it's an energetic job and you need to recharge the batteries on our days off. What's on the horizon, mate? We're getting close to, for those listening to the podcast, it's the late November and 2022. What's something that you're excited about for 2023, or perhaps if that's too far away, what's rest of 2022?
Oh gosh, for me it's a bit of a reset, to be honest. I've just finished up all my recent coaching roles, and I'm sort of in a period now where I get to reset and figure out where I want to go next. So I get to go away over the summer break, which will be fantastic. Nice. I'm away for about 6 weeks over summer. Reset there, get myself right. And then for me, I'm really keen to get back into coaching. And I've had a couple of ideas over the last couple of weeks or months about how I want to sort of redesign training if I get another opportunity at that, at that HPM level where I can sort of have a little more structure to it, or control of the structure. Throw some ideas at the training, and sort of maybe be a little bit sort of, I would sort of break the wheel a little bit and see if I can do some different stuff. I had some ideas, and I think I'm taking my American football background and applying it to sort of an S&C world. So I kind of want to see how that looks and feels moving forward. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Sounds exciting, mate, and good to see practitioners, wanting to sort of shake things up a little bit rather than just doing the same old thing. For those that want to get in contact and follow up with any questions, or just simply connect on socials, where's the best place to get in contact?
It's probably Facebook or Instagram. I'm not really marketable, to be honest. I'm not really out there doing a lot of stuff. If you just reach out to Caleb Morgan on Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn, I'm there. I'm one of those people who absolutely hates a notification bubble, so I'll probably answer you pretty quickly just so I get rid of the bubble. Or I'll seen you, or I'll just leave it on scene, and then you can just message me back and say what is going on here. No. I'll get back to you pretty quick. I hate the notification bubble. I clear them all. I'm OCD about it. So reach out, and I can happy to talk to you, and get moving.
Awesome. And for those that want to get in contact and book a session, mate, where you're basing your Prepare Like a Pro individual sessions on the field, and if gym's a possibility, where the gym session's taking place?
So I think for me at the moment, probably pretty field-based. I've just sort of moved around the last couple of months this year. So a bit of a moved from location to location. So just setting up my understanding of the area. So field-based. JJ Holland Oval in Kensington is one of the best turf fields in Melbourne. I will say that with confidence. They've just redone it. It's so slick. It's so soft. It's like I think it's the American company that's gone and rolled it in. So one of the best turf fields I've ever run around on. So for change of direction and speed stuff, it's 10 out of 10. So that's where I'll be at.
Fantastic. Awesome. Well, make sure to hit up that opportunity for those tuning in, whether your parents and you want to get your child faster, fitter, change of direction as well. Make sure to hit us up and work with Caleb. We have our next guest, which will be Vince Kelly next Thursday at 1:00. So thank you for everyone tuning in. If you tuned in halfway through, this episode will live on our YouTube channel until we publish it on our podcast. So make sure to listen to the very start. Caleb dropped gems all the way through, both for coaches, high performance staff, but also for athletes wanting to get better as well. So highly recommend it. It's been a great chat. Thank you again, Caleb, for jumping on, and looking forward to having to catch up with you, as well as catching up more importantly after what sounds like it's going to be a great trip, mate. 6 weeks to recharge. They'll be very jealous.
No, thank you, Jack. I really appreciate it. I'm very appreciative of this opportunity and being able to work with Prepare Like a Pro, but having this conversation and what you're doing is amazing. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate it, mate. And my role is very easy, asking the few questions. You're doing all the work, mate. So thank you for coming on and sharing with us some good insight into your career and what will be an amazing career ahead as well. And it's great to hear, success leaves clues. So, to share those insights into what it takes to work in elite sport. Really appreciate you coming on. Thanks again, mate.
Thanks, Jack. Really appreciate it.